This is the 8-9 combo.
This is the 8-9 combo. I'm Brett McKay. This is Harry Jones. Hello, mate. How are you?
How's it, man? This is the time of the year that's odd. For about a decade now, I have really taken an interest, and I would say developed a love/obsession with the strange and magical thing that is Australian rugby. And I would say I support Australia, the Wallabies, against just about anybody, but never against the Boks. And so this is that weird little interregnum where I go, oh, it's going to be really fun to pound you guys if we can do it. But Australia is very tricky. It's actually one of the most even rivalries post professional. Right now, it doesn't look like that. But in reality, Australia has always found a really good way to challenge the Boks by just dodging the head-to-heads. It might actually be interesting because they've just gone through. Will Skelton stepped on James Ryan's foot, wouldn't let him go. Then when Ryan protested, he dragged his scrum cap over his eyes. It was like an old-fashioned cartoon. I don't know how that's going to work against the Boks, but I would say to Will, try it, man. Try it.
Yeah. Look, it's funny. The Wallabies and Boks have always matched up pretty well in the professional era, as you say, despite the world rankings at the time, I would say. So
we're always the underdogs, underbox.
No, you're not. No, I'm not. I'm not buying that for another year. You are not getting away with that. Here's cheers. Except that we're going to go a bit editorial this week, aren't we? I'm going to start off with you. I will finish this on a high note, but we're going to give a little bit of an editorial here, and so bear with us, listeners and viewers. We need to use the Dan Sheen hit on Tom Liner as a bit of an entry to it, and so I give you jeers, mate, to the outcome of this process. Sheen was cited for that hit on Tom Liner in the third Lions test on Saturday night in Sydney, but as part of his submission to the foul play review committee, argued that it wasn't foul play and didn't warrant citing or further action. Yet, when he was found guilty, he was still offered a discount and handed, despite being found guilty. And then when he's handed a 6-week suspension, that was then knocked down to 4 weeks. They didn't give him the full 50% discount because he wouldn't accept the foul play sanction. So he only gave him 4 weeks, which then can become 3 weeks with tackle school. So that does my head in. I don't even care about the hit. I'm not even talking about the hit. This process that is just so struck down with over-generous discounts and things like that for guilty pleas, that here is a guy who flat out says, no, I do not accept that this is foul play, and yet we still gave him a discount. That does my head in, mate. It honestly does my head in, but I have a sneaking suspicion that you're going to go a bit further than I am.
Okay, well, my family will tell you that we don't ever talk around the dinner table about a specific crime if it's the reason why we're talking about it is because it's videoed. Because as I'll always tell them, there's 1,000, there's a million other crimes that are hot, hidden and unseen. And so I don't like taking individual fact patterns, especially local crime stories, which are rife with other angles we don't know behind the scene with negotiations and lawyers and judges. I just think the whole system is bereft and has been for quite some time for the reasons that you state, but magnified in thousands. And there are even worse examples of these weird, outcomes where you're not even really sure. And then problem is, like, what's the system? Why would you have a system like this, right? In life, it's so we don't have vigilante justice. So we trust it. We go, okay, so this kind of crime is a bit worse than this kind of crime.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, over 1,000 cases, it comes through. Rugby has none of that. We don't know what we are saying is the worst. We are not sure how mitigation works. We always know that when it comes out, we go, oh, let's just wait and see. And then we make a joke about tackle school or this school or that school. So it's lost the faith of the rugby public to which it is appealing and on which it depends. The fix is so easy. We have well, whatever, 10,000 years of recorded history in human, that we know how to erect an actual judicial system. It has to funnel up into a repeatable Supreme Court, if you will. And it's not that there's that many this every week. So you could have a sitting court that had common law precedents, and they could follow what they did, and you would look at it and you would say, whether I agree with this particular case or not, I go, I know what they're going to do, because that's what they do. And you bump it all up, right? So if someone is guilty of foul play, then make the thing have teeth. And then if it's not, shade it down. That's like the real world. You don't go to jail for parking crimes, but when you smash someone in the face on purpose, you do. So like, I think there's some ability to do this. I've seen no energy or attitude in the fix. And I think that's why an outside force, a push, a coup has to take place, and you take it over and you say, we're going to do this the way that proper justice systems work.
I absolutely agree with what you're saying. There are degrees. So we've sort of narrowed it down to 2016 is when it really changed. When they changed the tackle height to the shoulder line, they then also brought in a distinct foul play framework, if you like, that said if you hit someone here, it's going to start at mid-range. It's going to be 6 weeks. It's like so they're prescribed bands for each thing. What they then did wrong was then give 50%. So they even said, we want to send a message as a deterrent. So all foul play is going to start mid-range, and therefore for things like high tackles and dangerous cleanouts, it's 6 weeks. That's the starting point. But they then discount it so much that it loses all its meaning, and so it needs an overhaul. It needs an overhaul.
It's too Napoleonic, and everyone who's upset about it, don't go this way. Don't think so. We have to have even more of a template and rubric. That's where they went wrong. You need to have an alive human brain, not AI, that's unconstrained by all these frameworks, because the frameworks end up fucking you. So what you have to have is common law precedent, where people, instead of Napoleonic French brain, goes, if a dog bites a nun on a Thursday on her rump, then this is the penalty. That's not the way it is, man. You got to look at
6 down to 3, 2 with tackle school.
There's little nuances, and as people start to see the nuances of intent and how many steps I had before the clean out, and start to develop some kind of commonality there, they'll like it. I'll just do a quick cheers though. I love the French as well. I hate them, but the statement by Mathieu Renal, with a buy-in of every single owner, and sitting down collaboratively with the ref, saying the scrum where you can avoid being beaten and pinged to death because you have a weak scrum, those days are over. We are going to force you to die in the scrum. And the French are saying that in this top 14 Pro D2, you will scrum straight. You will feed it straight. You can put your shoulder in the mental sense, so you have one little tiny advantage, but you will put the ball in such a way that both hookers can hook, and there will be a titanic struggle, and you will lose if you have a bad scrum. That's what the most successful league in rugby wants. That's what they know is what the fans want. They want to have jeopardy at the scrum, where you cannot ice a game and put it to bed with two minutes to play, like NFL, boring, snooze. We want it to be up until the last second. You might lose. Bravo. Félicitations. C'est super.
I wish them nothing but the best, but I remain cynical.
And they're having a meeting back every week, and the French can be very bureaucratic, and they're going to look at, and then they're going to punish people. And this comes from on high. Mathieu Renal, William Serva, the revolution of scrums has begun.
We'll see. I look forward to reviewing that at the end of the next top 14 season and see whether scrums are still fed straight. I'm going to finish with you on a high too, mate, and it's cool. It's referees with a sense of humour. On behalf of referees worldwide, Angus Gardner went into the Wallabies change rooms on Saturday night and presented retiring Wallabies scrum half Nick White with a World Rugby referee's jersey. And there was, you can go to the socials, you can go to the Wallaby socials, and you can find it. It's not Angus Gardner that says it, and there's a great video that captures it all. It's not Angus Gardner that says it, but there is a voice in the background during the presentation that very clearly says, "World's best referee." So I'll just love
Nick White. and we always joke about nines, and this pod is built on a premise that nine is in the title, and we all know when we say nines, halfbacks, scrum halves, we know what we mean. Nick White embodies all that without any shame whatsoever. Like whatever you say about a nine being yappy, ridiculous,
he
somewhat
lives
a
up to
cartoon.
his.
At some point in his career, he was like, I'm just going to double down on that, triple down. Let's go.
Yeah.
So fair play to
absolutely.
him. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I love that. Yes, his retirement.
The world's
is not yet
shortest
over.
retirement ever.
Well, I mean,
Mike Tyson territory.
We'll revisit this. We'll revisit this. And we have an 8-9 combo debutant joining us for a great rugby chat very soon, mate. But first, can you please tell the nice people why subscribing to the 8-9 will help them deal with the upcoming rugby free weekend?
Oh, well, I don't know about that's an interesting premise. I was thinking, okay, during this rugby free weekend, you will allow me, hat in hand, like a pauper, to make my way by ship to South Africa, back home, where I will be the only journalist in the Wallaby press conference because Australia is not sending anybody over. And I'll get to say, hi, Joe Schmidt. Remember that article I wrote where I said, what the fuck, Joe? Why are you waiting? What you waiting for? He might not like me. Why did you think that test one was not really part of that series? But friend Harry Wilson, maybe Tane Edmund will be there. So hopefully I'll get to. So I thought just fund us, subscribe us, grow that overall inverted funnel so that big giant sponsors will dump trucks of money on us. And then Brett can also go to press conferences in Argentina.
Oh goodness. I wasn't ready for that. I hope I don't have to go by ship.
The 8-9 combo that we go by ship, yeah.
No, I don't like the expert. I don't like that at all. If you are watching us on YouTube, then hit the red subscribe button down there in the bottom corner. If you're on Spotify, if you're on Apple Pods, any of the pod platforms, then hit follow, hit like, hit subscribe, whatever it needs to be, and make sure you don't miss any of our press conference nonsense. Covering the Australian tour of the British Irish Lions for the Sydney Morning Herald comes this week's guest, who is also from Northern Ireland, which adds a nice mess of twisted dynamic. He was as confused as we all were when the players walked from the field early in the second half in Sydney on Saturday night, but we're handing him an 8-9 combo result, a debut regardless. Please welcome from the Sydney Morning Herald, Jonathan Drennan. Welcome to the 8-9 combo.
Hello.
Thank you so much for having me. Real pleasure. And what a combination of accents we've got tonight on the show.
That's a melange.
I've got to ask, mate, a Northern Irishman covering the Wallabies in a series against the British and Irish Lions for the most prominent rugby paper in Australia. Was your brain just spinning for 6 consecutive weeks? Like, how did that work?
Yeah, it's been a real journey. I mean, I've been at the Sydney Morning Herald for the last 2 years. So obviously grew up in Belfast, wrote for the Irish Times and the Guardian in England. Did a bit of a stint. Chatted with Harry about this before at the Cape Argus in South Africa as well. So amazing journey actually, because I grew up the first test, like so many people who know about the Lions. It was 97, which in some ways people say really kind of saved the Lions because 93 in New Zealand wasn't so good. So I grew up with that Lions aura. Then 2001 in Australia, and then probably my favorite test ever, 2009, which obviously, Harry, I'm sure you were delighted your boys came through, but an amazing series. And then to be there, it was a real experience. And I have to be honest, I mean, obviously my accent, but I don't think I felt more Australian than I did during that series. I was absolutely delighted the Wallabies got up in the end. And I think I'm right in saying as well, and this is actually someone with a really strong Irish accent, I don't think the Southern Hemisphere has been more bound together in the last while than during this Lions series. So yeah, long may it continue. And it was a really good experience and really enjoyed it.
Look, it makes sense, mate. If Australia's supplying Irish Lions, then it's only fair that Ireland supplies rugby riders down our part of the world as well, mate. That seems like a fair exchange to me.
Yeah, I think you might have got dudded. I think they got Mike Hansen and Finlay Bealham. You got Jonathan Drennan. So don't really think that's a fair exchange. But anyway.
It's all good. It's all good.
So what do you guys think, looking back at the Lions now? We have just enough time where the breathless, thoughtless, knee-jerk opinions have faded away, and now we can actually look at it, like you say, in the long thread of time, sort of the 97, 01. You say these numbers, and we all go, oh, yeah, 09. Okay, what was that? What was the 25 Lions? And my jump-off point there is both coaches are actually unhappy right now. It was clear from the beginning that Farrell wasn't coming to Australia to make friends and go to primary schools and have a little fun. He wanted to do a 3-0 sweep, and he had something to prove, so he didn't. And he allowed the Australians to say that dead rubber minutes are the same as when on the line. So that makes him crazy, probably. So he's unhappy. Joe Schmidt is looking and going, well, shit, I was closer than I thought. What if I had used first test as a proper So who's the least unhappy coach now?
I'm tied up in this question. Like, you're just asking who's the happiest? You get me with the double negatives.
The premise is really key that they both are unhappy. There's something that's going to gnaw at them until they're 85 and go, "Urgh." And we know coaches are like this. They will. They'll sit back and replay it. Joe definitely, Andy definitely, and the relationship between the two of them is part of that question. So they're both unhappy because they both wanted to give their old friend an uppercut. Who's the least unhappy now? That's the only thing. That's the measure.
They met up for a coffee in Sydney on Sunday morning, and they both looked at the same clip and they argued who was the worst, least unhappy about it.
Yeah, exactly. Go, John.
I reckon definitely. Getting focused. I reckon definitely Andy Farrell's happier because they came for 3-0, still series win. Joe Schmidt, knowing Joe Schmidt, I don't know him personally, but knowing his career from Ireland, will still be fixated. Maybe fixated is the wrong word, but focused on that late decision against Lozano. Now he won the test, and for a guy who really is so knowledgeable about the laws and every minutiae of it, I think that'll be hard for him to digest. It is the cliche that the hope that kills you. If you had said to most Australian rugby supporters, right, this is how it's going to go down. You're going to lose in the first test 8 points. You're going to lose heroically, if that's the word, in a last-minute try, and then you're going to have a comprehensive win. Obviously, most people would say, no, we wouldn't take it's a loss. That's nonsense. Like when he took over last March, the state of Australian rugby, to even be competitive, Harry and Brett it just wasn't even conceivable when we were getting a record dusting from Argentina. I can't remember where it was. Was it La Plata?
One of them.
Yeah, last year, which people forget. It just the idea that we could even field a competitive team. So I think if you're being logical about it, you would say in some ways maybe Schmidt, because nobody gave the Wallabies a shot, and also it was a bit of a no-win for Farrell in a way, because for South Africa or New Zealand, a series win's a series win, and 2001 world champions. Wallabies series wins a series win. The Wallabies coming off such a low ebb where we had starting debutant 5/8 or fly half, and to still be in with the shot, I reckon that's going to know a bit. But overall, I think
his press corps did him no favors, isn't it, John? They were pumping up too much. So Andy was sort of like, you have a Ferrari and you're racing against a Yugo. And then Joe Schmidt gets to say that. But I actually think I agree with you that even if all that's true is logical, Joe Schmidt's, the other part of his brain that he likes to pretend he doesn't have, the emotion, the fire competitive, it's going to gnaw at him forever. Whereas Andy at least gets to go in the record books. When it counted, we had an 18-point comeback win and we won. That's it.
I think Farrell walks away. Farrell flies away from Australia this week with a series win under his belt, a series winning bonus in his wallet, and an open invitation to coach the Lions again in 2029 in New Zealand. And as far as career coaches go in the home nations, that's about as open a checkbook as they get right now. So I reckon he's pretty content with life. I think you're right. Schmidt's going to be annoyed for all the reasons that you just identify there, that you both identify. And he'll be thinking from now until he finally does stop coaching, whenever that happens to be, why didn't I do this in the first test? Why didn't I pick Will Skelton, maybe even at 90%? You know, there'll be things like that, you know, metaphorically keep him up at night for the rest of his coaching days. But at the same time, he has achieved a massive amount, as you just say, Jono, because what he's done with the Wallabies that he inherited post-23 World Cup were in a really, really bad state. This team now, with a lot of those same players, are a genuine number 6 in the world, whereas what he picked up was sort of the dribs and drabs of a 9 and 10 in the world, and they were not great at all. Now, that's a very, very good squad that he's building.
Yeah, and I think Joe Schmidt, knowing him a little bit, he doesn't like to be graded on a curve, and he won't want any mercy or charity. I think he's just going to be pretty tough on himself and say, I should have won it. So let's jump to that. What is the worst mistake? Because coaches make mistakes, even the best ones. They're better coaches than us, but we get to talk about mistakes because that's true. What was the worst mistake? The avoidable mistake, not the unavoidable, but the actual avoidables mistake that each guy made here.
Well, so I reckon the first one, the obvious one here is laced with hindsight, and that's probably the decision.
Hindsight's cool. Yeah,
it's maybe the decision to not play Skelton and Valentini in Brisbane because
Skelton was saying he was fit.
And Schmidt himself even said on the night in Brisbane, like post match, that they trained really well in the morning. And in hindsight, you know, had we have known that on Thursday, we might have taken a risk. And even if he meant that we might have taken a risk with one of them, if not both, that might be the one that gnaws at him. Because if he had half an hour out of Will Skelton off the bench, or if he could get 45 minutes out of Rob Valentini starting, I reckon he'd have taken that.
I mean, if you get 2 minutes with Will Skelton, maybe you knock James Bryan out. John, what do you think? To me, well, I mean, like you run into the bad parts of Will Skelton when you're trying not to.
Yeah,
he's got a lot of bad parts to him, and so you can just get injured as you you're mauling against him and you get injured. You know, is the mistake there? Is the mistake within the mistake, Jono, that Joe Schmidt overrates his training regimen too much, his protocols? Put Will Skelton in. I don't care if he's got any of your plays. He's not jumping in a line out anyway. He gets gain line by falling over. Like, is he almost too pedantic about you've got to be here for 5.3 days and do this many reps?
Yeah. It's I mean, obviously from Ireland, we know that it goes back that with Smith, you have to train with the team to have any selection chance. So for example, everyone here was talking about Lalakai or Taniela Tupou, just said how well he was playing for the First Nations Pacifica team, but there was no way that he was ever going to get picked for then to back up from Tuesday, because with Smith you have to be within that training regime.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say, which is for me, it's massive hindsight, and a lot of people were laying in the boot. I wasn't one of them at the time, but probably with the gift of hindsight, if we're being brutal, there wasn't enough warm-up games. So people were saying, we spoke to Peter Horn and some other people, and they were saying that because the Super Rugby team or Super Rugby calendar ended, but I still think they could have squeezed in at least one. Or what they could have done, even, which Ireland do quite a lot, is behind closed doors, you play, for example, Waratahs 15 or Brumbies Waratahs, and just have like a live game. So at least, you know, there's a bit almost like a pre-season thing, or you do Samoa. Now against that, we had the game against Fiji, and Noah Loloseo gets injured. I mean, injuries obviously happen, but for example, say they play, I mean, this is hindsight, this is media, but say they play Samoa the next week, and Valentini has a season-ending injury, and Alatoa blows out his shoulder, then everyone would have said, Smith, you shouldn't have risked it. 100%. And this has been the whole series. And I'm not saying that I'm exempt from doing this. I'm sure I am. But it was driving me crazy, like reading some of the overseas media as soon as the first test went down. Why are we here? Australian rugby is a joke. And I just
they're not even taking this seriously. Yeah.
No. Yeah. And I know for a fact that this is the way the media works, but just how narratives can change so quickly. For example, I know if we had the same result with a 2-1 loss for the Wallabies losing, but say the Wallabies had squared up in Melbourne. So say that decision was given to Zano. you watch that build up.
Yeah.
Not every media outlet, but they would have gone for the Lions. They would have gone for all the stuff that was documented in the build up, like the Pete Samu, what else?
Yeah.
The school kid getting shut down from asking a question in Adelaide. All that stuff would have been documented because they won. And that's, that's media, as into the victors go the spoils. But I did read a bit of stuff overseas, and it was funny because they won the series, but there still was criticisms because it's looked, which maybe is a bit insulting to Australia, I don't know, but it is looked with different optics, which I think it probably should be to a Springboks, certainly as world champions now, or even New Zealand. That's why that 3-0 was important.
Yeah, there was certainly a feeling, there was certainly a bit of a subplot as why aren't the Lions absolutely thumping Australia?
Exactly.
Why is that not happening? So I tend to agree with that. The warm up games thing is interesting though, Harry, because I think Australian rugby. I think you could go back to the 2011 World Cup, and the Wallabies played Samoa in Newcastle, funnily enough, where the Fiji game was, and didn't just lose, but got thumped, not on the scoreboard, but got literally thumped on the field. There's a couple of injuries, but really come out of it in a bad way. And there was a lot of criticism about it. I don't think Australia's jumped at the idea of warm-up tests ever since. And even the Fiji test as it was, that didn't get added to the schedule until I reckon not even 12 months ago, John. I reckon it was maybe just before they went to Europe in November last year. Suddenly they were playing Fiji in the week before. Yeah. So, obviously at that point, you're trying to work out who's available. But I think it took a good amount of someone being talked into the idea of playing a warm-up game.
It's interesting to me. So there's evidence both ways inside my head when I watched Joe Schmidt that he devalued the series, but then once he got into it, in the heat of it, he kind of wished he hadn't, and now he'll, to his regret. But I don't think he sufficiently valued the first test. If he's a guy as an aficionado of reps and training, and if we can see from the series itself that building really did help each team and became cohesive, it's undeniable that the Wallabies, even with a couple of injuries more, would have been better as a team if they had had more time in the saddle. And they had a dozen years, so I'm not thinking Joe here, the RA had a dozen years to get that shit together. You also can release players, the ones that are marginal, that you wonder if they're coming back, to Tom Hooper or Rob Valentine, they get them in and into those warm-up games against the Lions. And that's also a good way to see how they're going.
Yeah.
And so there were ways to do it. So I think that's fair as the worst mistake. If Joe's going to care about this series in retrospect more than he did first test, where he said, well, we're building into a season and this is good for people. What's the worst mistake Andy made? To me, it was the celebration at MCG, the chairs on the field, reenacting Hugo Keenan. Go back and see in these NBA series where there's a 7 games, best of 7. And coaches forbid celebration when you're on the second win, the third win. You have to wear black. It's like a funeral. No one's allowed to celebrate at all. So if Andy wanted the 3-0, and I think he desperately did, I think he wanted to give it to Joe, then he should have cut all that short and said nothing has been done yet. Nothing. And been like a very just insane coach, like a coach where you almost hate him for a week, and not do what Ireland did in the World Cup and run their players in the ground, Tyburn notwithstanding, because he can play forever, I think. But there were other players that could have been refreshed. So I think it's that week in between MCG and Sydney, where Andy, I think, lost his way a little bit. He wanted the lads to have a party and get drunk.
And that's it, because they definitely celebrated in Melbourne. They took a leisurely afternoon flight up to Sydney, where they kept going in Sydney on Sunday night, and then they kept going on Monday at the Coogee Bay Hotel where they were staying up the road, and they really didn't start training properly until Tuesday afternoon, I think, Jono. It was a pretty relaxed lead-in for the Lions in the final week.
Yeah, but you never know. For example, I don't think Finn
look,
Russell's Finn Russell's blood could be Iron Brew and he'll still be phenomenal. I think, again, it comes back to that idea that
when you've got a series win in your back pocket, you can drink beer for as long as you want to.
It's really hard to get around from that, but I think there are ways you can do it. And then one of those is they take the chairs out and they're doing that, and the coach goes on and takes them all back and says, no, back in. And you make another moment, which is said, job done, but not complete. Down 8-0. If it's a second test, a Lion gets to Tom Hooper and cleans him out. But in the dead rubber, he doesn't. They don't get there, and it's 8-0 still at halftime. And to me, that's where I saw it. Is there wasn't that extreme desire to destroy you. It was more like, come on, we did win.
Yeah, that's fair.
So what's the best gamble? What's the best gamble in selection or style that you think both guys made?
I reckon this is easy for the Wallabies. I reckon they decided for Melbourne, and there was a little bit of criticism after Brisbane, but they decided for Melbourne, we're not taking any itchay, as Will Skelton said at halftime. And they just said, all right, if you blokes want to carry on, we're up for this. And that sort of followed in with, Nick White coming in Brisbane, and he was, the prime flag flyer, which is interesting in itself for a guy who's 75 kilos. But there was, as I say, there was a little bit of criticism after the Brisbane test, particularly when Tom Curry hit Tom Liner, and there wasn't really a lot of remonstrating with him in Melbourne. And yes, it's Skelton, yes, it's whoever else, but there was definitely an attitude shift, and they absolutely went, if there's a bit of something going on, we're going to make sure we're going back on that, even if we get penalised for it.
Or we're going to start the thing going on, actually.
Or we might start a few things as well. So that was, and I reckon that I think the Lions didn't see that coming, and it put them on the back foot. It put them on the back foot for half an hour in Brisbane and in Melbourne, I beg your pardon, and it definitely put them on the back foot in Sydney.
Yeah, that's a good shot.
I mean, for me, Nick White, with people are being honest, there cannot be too many people who are saying, "Wow, what an inspired decision to start Nick White." I mean, obviously, it subsequently came out that Jake Gordon was injured with his hamstring, which was interesting. I don't know why they didn't just literally say.
Why didn't you just say that? Issue. Yeah.
Exactly. But then a lot of people would have said, again, like Tate McDermott's been playing brilliantly, start Tate McDermott and then have White off the bench. But White was this is hindsight, but Schmidt needs to be given credit for this because they were really flat. I was in the hotel and it was really, really low, like not unreasonably. But Nick White was the perfect guy to come in. And also all the stuff, even the light stuff with the moustache, for his last game, which now isn't his last game. And I don't know if they're going to do another, like an Ellis Park with moustaches. But I think that was just something to play for. And it doesn't need to be much. And then the other thing is we actually subsequently heard Alan Alatoa came into the changing room, the team hotel, and basically like with a bust arm, bust shoulder, and he played like a half of rugby essentially with one arm, and he basically just talked about what it meant for him to be a Wallaby, and that really revved him up. But Nick White, he just is that he's your archetypal scrum half. It was funny you had that photo of Angus Gardner. I noticed. Did you notice his finger? Have you noticed his finger? Can you call up that photo?
Let's bring that in.
Is that a middle finger? Is that a middle finger?
Bravo, Gus.
For our podcast,
is it?
Just jump on the YouTube where we're watching this. We've got we might post this photo on the socials as well. But you might have.
Is it? Mate. Am I right? Am I right or no? I don't know.
Look, his middle finger is very straight, is what I'll say there.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. We'll need to go to the tape. Well, go to the TMO on that.
That's a great shot, Jono. I think that's a.
I don't know. Maybe not.
That's a good example of a gamble, right? So you do a thing that most polled Australian rugby fans would go, no, don't do that, and you do it, and you run the riverboat, and it works. By the way, I will say Nick White's going to be very, very welcome in Joburg and in Cape Town. We will embrace him, and he will be given a proper retirement send off. I think what they should do in the next photo session to humor Nick White as he's unretiring is everyone walk in bow-legged. Just have everyone try to do their best Nick White, incredible bow leg. He's already crouched at the scrum before he crouches. He's got this kind of preternatural, like prehensile shrug.
He won't need to stand with his inside shoulder on the middle line of a scrum. He just needs to sort of slightly lean on one bow leg, and he's already there.
My best gamble, I thought, to win the series and just come off was Andy Farrell going with a very high octane, high carry when it didn't make sense. So that when the time came where the only way to win the series was to be able to score a lot of points in a very quick time, they were used to it. They were used to getting reps and going. Yeah. They didn't require a lot of phase play to score, even though they ended up doing 15 phases. It was more the scores before that, where you scored 2 before off time and then 1 before the final. I think in previous Lions iterations under Warren Gatland, if you had that kind of lead, there's no way they could have reeled them back in. I also think that same style exhausted them, and also by picking the same players, came undone on the third test. But it's interesting to me. I think when I watched a lot of the warm-up games, I thought, what are you doing, Lions? I mean, you're crazy.
Yeah. Well, they were outlining exactly what they were going to do. We've had this discussion in chat groups. They kicked 4 penalty goals in 6 weeks. And only 2 of them were in tests, and none of them since Brisbane. Tom Lynagh kicked 3 in the first half in Melbourne alone. So
that's like more. It's more than the Queensland Reds, like the whole season, isn't it? Pretty much.
True. They scored 49 tries for the tour, and I haven't gone back and done the maths and done the comparison, but that feels like it would be a lot. And I even go back to 2013, and Lee Halfpenny ended up with well over 100 plus points, and he was kicking penalty goals for fun by the end of the tour. So it's a real change of attitude, isn't it?
Who do you guys think was the epitome, like Mr. Wallaby and Mr. Lion? Who epitomized their teams in the 25 Lions tour?
I've got 2. So I've got so obviously I mentioned Alan Alatua. So I think it's just the epitome of sacrifice, giving your body. And then we interviewed Taniela Tupou, who also should be said had a brilliant performance. Again, was a slight gamble. There were people going, listen, he was not great for the Waratahs.
No.
You're risking starting him. Should you not maybe be a bit more conservative in play? Robertson, who, hadn't let anybody down, but he vindicated. But then Tupou said, I didn't want to let Alatua down. So I think that just shows the real respect he has within that environment as a leader. And then I'd say for the Lions, which is something which shouldn't be forgotten, was Gary Ringrose, who was in incredible form. I mean, as good as Hugh Jones was, Gary Ring was outstanding. To put up your hand and say, I'm not right with concussion, and you get one shot. Most people get one shot at the Lions. Not only a Lions test cap, the opportunity to win a Lions series. And, he made the right decision, for his health, his family, everything else. And, the message throughout the world should be, that's the right thing.
Yeah.
But it's good. It's something that can be lost in the midst of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And the history books will show that Gary Ringrose hasn't played a Lions test yet, but he will be remembered for so much more than that. I'll give you 2 other names. And I was thinking about this when you first threw the question at us, Harry. I was trying to think of who were the guys that did the jobs and didn't get the reward for it. And, Todd Byrne was a player of the series. Finn Russell was a player of the series. There was about 14 different players in the series. Tom Curry was excellent. But I'm going to give you Jack Conan, who just played 3 really all these games at number 8 were just really consistent, really solid, 8 out of 10 performances every time. Did the job, made his tackles, carried well, was completely reliable. And you've only got to go back a couple of months ago and there would have been questions as to whether Jack Conan makes the tour. Obviously Kalen Doris's injury opened the door for him, but Conan makes the tour, plays brilliantly. Equally, Nick Frost for the Wallabies, I think, is probably playing his best rugby right at the moment. He had a really strong Super Rugby season for the Brumbies, and it's just carried through. He is dominating lineouts at an international level now against some pretty good opposition, and he's carrying well, makes his tackles, but he is absolutely dominating lineouts right now, and that sets him up for a massive career, I think.
Yeah, I think that's
Ari, does this work?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, does this work as a comparison? I was thinking about this when I was watching Nick Frost. Him and Skelton together, I'm not saying it's the real version. I'm saying it would be a very pale imitation. But there are times where kind of that combo would remind me a little bit of Matt Field and Backy's, in that you have just the bruiser, the enforcer, really physical player. Like, yeah, you're right, Brett. Like Frost can make carries, but it's not really. He's more of an athletic talent, real skillful line-out operator. And that yin and yang just works so well together. The problem is for us in Australia, enjoy Will Skelton while you have him, because it is rare. We get him. And also part of the reason I think he's been so good is because we've had a long lead in, which is also blessed by the fact that La Rochelle missed their first final in 6 years.
Yes,
but yeah, I think having Skelton there is only going to help him, although he has to take on more of the line out, because obviously Williams is a jumper as well.
Yeah, I think, John, that's the quintessential sort of 4-5 lock pairing. Obviously, I would say that Bucky's Botha was an underrated athlete and would go from sideline to sideline and make cover tackles, including an important one in the World Cup final. And Victor Matfield, although we view him as soft, was never quite as soft as he seemed. So I think
not soft.
If you could,
who's doing even soft?
Nice, trust me.
Well, he was a great looking dude for a second row. Maybe that's why.
In South Africa, Vicky is known as soft and Bucky's is the hard man. But I'm saying that's overrated. I'm actually agreeing with you. But if you could harden Frost up, and if you could get Skelton to even be a little more active from tram to tram, then you'd be apt.
Yeah.
Brett, I saw some great stats on Jack Conan of the minutes in between a tackle or a carry, and he was the best. So he was the most active actually over the whole.
The least inactive.
It was Ben Earl and Jack Conan. Obviously 18 and get a lot of carries, but still, it was a phenomenal. The work rate, quiet with the mustache. For me, epitome. I think Mr. Wallaby has to be for me Len Ikitau, because he embodied exactly where the faults were, why the series was lost. His defense was absolutely execrable in the second test at times. But also when the Wallabies were on the front foot, even though out of position, and it shouldn't be in 12, he was so good. He just had a knack for doing something. And I think Wallabies are like that. They shouldn't almost beat the Lions, almost did. I think Len Ikitau is that kind of guy. And for the Lions, I was thinking Maro Itoje, because when he was off, everything changed in the third test, and I think he was such a glue player, because he gives you this sort of forever work rate and sort of undeniable spirit that he has, quiet as it is. But I probably have to go with Curry, because to me he did epitomize this particular Lions in that he's a flawed character. He can pick holes in his game, but one thing is for sure, he is a big time, big money, big moment player. That track back killing of Suaalii, to me, turned the tide. I've watched that test again, and I thought, if Suaalii just gives that quickly, I don't know why he would, but if he did, series is over.
Yeah.
I mean, the game is over, and you go to Sydney, tied up. So yeah. That being said, where must the Wallabies build now? Let's sort of jump to where we go now.
Yeah.
What do they do? The Lions have all gone back. That was the final game of their season. They're resting. They have their 3-week break, 4-week break. Wallabies immediately go, no favors, and the squad's out. Where do they have to build? And does what happens next change how we see the Lions series, or what? How does it work?
No, I don't think so, because the Boks and New Zealand, because we play them so much, they're seen. I think the Australian view of South Africa and New Zealand, I think, is different to the Northern Hemisphere. I think there's still a bit of a novelty factor about South Africa in the North. There's still a expectation that there's still even a view of New Zealand that sometimes maybe paints them as better than they are in the North, whereas maybe South Africa is underrated. I don't think either of those are true in Australia, because we see them so often. So whatever happens over the next couple of weeks in South Africa, I don't think that changes the Lions series results or what they achieve, the Wallabies. So what happens next? What I'd like to see is, what's the next evolution of the game? And yes, they've got the big physical carriers, but if they could actually start bringing in a little bit of a second phase element to it, if they could get an offload on every fourth or fifth carry, that's the game going to an extra dimension. And that's where you bring the Jorgensens and the Suolitis and the Dylan Peaches and the Tom Wrights into the game and makes them more dangerous again. So it could just be a little simple thing like that. Is that something you can do in 2 weeks in South Africa? Probably not. But I reckon that's something that the Wallabies need to start bringing in over the next 12 or 18 months for a World Cup.
I think the hardest thing about rugby in this country, which I'm not used to in Ireland because I grew up in the 90s in Ireland when you were genuinely delighted to beat Wales. In this country, every single test, and I'm sure to a lesser degree, I know how serious rugby is taken in South Africa and New Zealand as well, but every single test of Wallabies play, it's either really, really good or ghastly. So, for example, everything needs to be taken into perspective. They're going to Johannesburg, which is one of the hardest places to win, in the world. The last time they won in the high belt, I think, was 2010. So that context needs to be respected. It's also the world champions. We're going in, fairly bashed up after a tough series. So South Africa need to be given every single piece of respect. Then Cape Town's maybe slightly different. I actually personally think that Joe Schmidt needs to be quite strategic. Now, I'm not saying go into Ellis Park and say, "Oh, we don't have a chance. Let's just lie down." No, of course not. But the next 11 tests are so crucial, not just for pride, and momentum, all those things Australia desperately needs to stop getting the game bagged. But every single game carries ranking points, and essentially, after the disaster of the 2023 World Cup, Australia really ideally needs to be in the top 6 to be at the top of one of the 4 pools. So I did do the maths, and if they can get any kind of big away victory, it will do their ranking points.
Absolutely.
And Harry, you're a man of letters. I'm sure you can crunch the numbers better than me, mate. But basically, if they can win Cape Town, and even if it's almost, I think there needs to be a bit of strategy. Now, I'm not saying they shouldn't compete. They have to compete. But the 2 most important tests for the Wallabies, for me, are Argentina. So not to say that you would die for a victory in South Africa. I think the last time was Durban, maybe 2011, and when a young James O'Connor was in the wing. You would love a victory in South Africa, but that's a real bonus. If Australia can get a win in Cape Town, say, get the bumping out, but the absoluteness, the non-negotiable is 2 victories against Argentina. Because if Argentina beat Australia in Australia, there's a handicap in the world rankings, which basically benefits the away team. So if they beat Australia by over 15 points, they will get a lot of ranking points. So
and Australia would drop a lot. Yes,
exactly. And don't forget as well, because we got more teams, we have a knockout stage. So we have a round of 16 as well. So you don't just go into the quarters. So essentially, long story short, breaking it down, Australia need to be top 6. They need to be really strategic, and there's some massive banana skins, including Italy away.
Where are the Bledisloes played this year?
Auckland and Perth. Just to add to that,
so Eden Park.
Just to add to that, Jono, the gap between Australia in 6th and England in 5th is decent. It's like nearly 5 rankings points, but the gap to Fiji in 7th and Scotland in 8th is bugger all. So you're right. If they drop those games, even just one of those games against Argentina, they could be even down to 9th by the time they actually get to the north in November. So I completely agree with you.
So the takeaway from that, Jono, is to stay. You're saying storyboard the Rugby Championship in such a way that gives him the best chance to maybe come up a bit, or it's consolidate 6th. And because
absolutely.
The rise from 8 to 6 was just because Scotland didn't have their players and they fell. It was funny. So in the end, it's that's a tough sell though, right? Because every Wallaby goes on the pitch every time. you know,
Of
and
course.
that honor and privilege, like Alatoa, like you cannot tell Alatoa, like, don't take this too seriously. On the other hand, it does set up that way because you guys are going to Ellis Park without proper tight heads. I mean, how's that going to work one way or the other? I think,
Yeah.
I think
There's
you can
there's a
kind of
lot there's a
slough
lot
that
of
off
sweat
against
on the
Andrew Porter, but you're not going to
yeah.
get away with that with Ox Incha and
There's a
Malcolm
lot of there's
Marks.
a lot of sweat on the fitness of Tupou. Certainly,
Yeah.
That's a. Can I
Yeah,
throw one more?
yeah.
No, sorry, keep
Go
going there,
ahead.
mate.
No. I was just going to say, like Tupu, it is reported a toe injury. We don't know quite how serious that is, but I think with Schmidt, we have he goes into every game because he wants to win. But for example, last November, definitely in Scotland, he wasn't, they still played to win, but it was a very, very different team to the one that went out in
Yes.
England, Wales, and Ireland.
Yes. It was.
So sometimes he will still go out, but it's almost, there's a couple of weapons. So he will go to Ellis Park with the best efforts. But to put it this way, if there's a game that he's going to target, and I don't know whether he is or he isn't, I'm targeting Cape Town. Not to say that it's a hell of a task, but Ellis Park it's almost mission impossible.
Ellis Park is like Eden Park. It's just
hard. It is.
I'll throw one more thing in there to what Australia needs to take out of the series as well. The other thing I would do is all tests in Australia now need to be really built up as an event. The match presentation and everything that went into the Lions series was extraordinary. Like, I've never seen build up to games like what we see. And that's not to say that they need to go to that level for every test, starting with Argentina in Townsville, but treat every test like a proper event. Make it worth going to, and not just don't make it feel like a third Rugby World Cup pool game. Like, actually make it worthwhile, make it worth something going to, and that's how you can actually build a bit of support and passion and everything for it. And you can bring back that whole element of what it was like 20 years ago, when it was genuinely hard to get Wallabies tickets because it was a massive event. And yes, it was a good team and they won a lot. That definitely helped. But it was the occasion of it as well. And that's the other thing I'd take out of it. Actually make something of test matches.
Yeah, I think that's true. And Jono, from a South African point of view, the thought is destroy the Wallabies in Ellis Park. And I mean, like, bully them, physical, smash them, because the contest with the Boks is with the Lions. So they want to draw a sharp contrast with what the Lions did against the Wallabies, and then double that, reduce, destroy all hope. Then go to Cape Town and then do razzle dazzle. I'm talking like Goof Troop Carnival and try to score as many tries. But Ellis Park is definitely positioned as, you think Will Skelp, what? You think Morrow's, come on, let's go. And there's a real hunger for that because the anger is against the Lions. So it's weird. The Wallabies will bear the brunt of the, how great the Lions were and all that talking up. And at some point, both All Blacks and Boks were like, hello? Did someone forget about us here?
What else
Every time
here?
a Lion would do something, you go, well, it's definitely one of the best hookers in the world, Dan Sheen. I'm like, he's very good. But remember the guy named Malcolm Marks. Just hello.
And do you know what I really hope as well is that and I know it's going to happen, so say hypothetically we come off this really good feeling of great win, close series, everything else, all that good progress, all that hard-won progress. I hope to God that if there is a fairly tough defeat in Johannesburg, it's not this crisis. Oh my God, it's crisis. I find it really, really fatiguing that every single game it's either
How long you been in Australia, mate?
It's always heaven and hell. It's always the end and it's always the beginning. And there's never
just a happy medium of can we not just look at with a bit of perspective that South Africa are like incredibly difficult to beat in Ellis Park. A prime Ireland team will struggle at Ellis Park. That's just not. It's nothing to be particularly ashamed of. Now, yes, if they get smashed in Cape Town, but what I would be interested in as well is with everything we said, do you go Skelton? Do you go Valentini? I mean, we don't know. We'll find out. We don't know how fit he is. Or do you go, because if you're going to target a game, which is still a hell of a test, is Cape Town. You're not, like Ellis Park is almost, it's very, very difficult.
Yep. So let's actually have a look at the squad that was named. Well, so sorry. First, the Rugby Championship starts. What are we? Saturday week, next weekend. So obviously, the Box are hosting Australia. New Zealand are in Argentina for the first 2 weeks of the tour as well. The Wallaby squad was named on Thursday. Eventually, there was sort of rumors at one point that we might have seen it Wednesday. There was a bit of discussion around that, but it sort of finally trickled out on Thursday. I don't think there was any huge surprise, Jono, in that Australian squad, but maybe a few pleasant surprises in that Skelton is going to play at least these 2 tests in the Rugby Championship, and that Tupou and Valentini are actually going to get on a plane and go to South Africa, because I was certainly wondering whether one or both of them might just maybe sit back and get fit and be ready for Argentina.
Yeah, I think it is good news, but we don't know the fitness.
We still don't know how good they are for the first test, certainly.
Yeah, we did the maths at the Sydney Morning Herald, and we worked out that Will Skelton, since he departed for Saracens when he left the Waratahs in 2017, he has only played in the Rugby Championship. I think the last time was 2016 and 2023. So he just hasn't really been able to do it. So it's a huge luxury to have him there. Yeah. And also, God, he'll be needed against a very hungry Springbok team. But I think Ryan Lonergan, I'll be interested to see, he's obviously been biding his time, has done everything right. When will he come in? I'm assuming he's especially after Nick White's amazing comeback tour, he's still going to be third. Tina Edmed, I think, has had such an interesting season. Talk about a comeback kid. It's the return of Tina Edmed. Harry's been waiting for this moment for as long as he had the crayons out. I mean, we still got to talk about the color of that red hair, but
I'm very happy for him, and he's the kind of guy who I think would be a good tourist. He's a tough boy. I've always thought that the beginning, middle, and end of any renaissance of Wallabies has to be with defense, and stop the dreaming of what did we do in the good old days, the 90s, because I don't think rugby's that way anymore. I think it's too easy to score against the Wallabies, and they don't do enough kick chase. And I think guys like Max Jorgensen feed off scraps like Louis Bielberry. That's where that's the type of player he is. I'm not saying he's as good as him yet, but building around that and knowing that you have to launch 15 really good contestables in the Ellis Park is the only way to win, because it's the quickest ball. Instead of running into walls, I'm like, they could work a couple of times, but it's not going to work against the Box to run into them. And I think the All Blacks aren't going to be frightened by that either. So I think it's interesting. If you have a good Lonergan has the best pass in Australia, if you have Tain Edmund who knows how to get the ball out of his hands into someone else's hands really quickly, and let those other magic workers work. To me, that's where they can have some pay to it. And I think in general, Joe Schmidt has that. He knows that. I just think he's wedded to this idea of being in my system. So I would like to see Tainema get a run, because he's been in it enough now where I think he can. And Joe puts a lot of responsibility on his 10s of how to run the ship.
I think there's every chance that he will. Like someone's got to wear 22. So it's going to be Edmed or it's going to be O'Connor, realistically. So I think I think it'll be Edmed. I think it'll be Edmed. Yeah, I think it probably will be too. And the big winners out of that is probably the Brumbies, because all of a sudden they get a Wallaby fly half later in the year. So
and he's got to build for the future, guys. I mean,
absolutely.
There's a huge gap. Absolutely. When I looked at the cap gap and I put that into illustrated it a couple of times, it was monumental. And what's struck with is there's a lot of people in that 20s, 15 to 25, but there's just no one from 30 caps to 60 caps, and it has to be in game managing positions. If you back Tom Wright, you back him and get him to 50 caps, 60 caps, because you can see what happens when you bring a bigger cap, Valentini, Tupou, Skelton. It just not just the players themselves, but the caps they had. They had
Yeah.
seen things, they had done things, they knew the occasion wasn't too big for them. So I think desperately this less kiss handover and Joe Schmidt bequeathing him something like, here's what I'm giving you. Part of that is you got to get some guys into the 30, 40 caps.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so just on Skelton, John, and you mentioned that he hasn't played the Rugby Championship too much. The interesting thing about Skelton is that for as long as he's been around, he's now like he's played 34 tests, so he's still only played the same sort of number of tests as Tom Robertson, as Jake Gordon. Angus Bell's played 39.
Right.
You know, Tom Wright, Len Hicketau have played 40 odd. Tate McDermott's played 45. So you're like Harry Wilson and Fraser McWright have played just under 30. So they're only a couple of tests behind Will Skelton in all that. On Lonergan, Harry, my gut feeling is that we won't see him until the Argentina tests. And if we do see him in South Africa, maybe it's Cape Town. It won't be Johannesburg first up.
Well, I wouldn't put him on the field at Ellis Park. I think that's a terrible
The other
idea.
thing that I think the Lions series proved is, and Nick White proved it, is that Tate McDermott's best position for the Wallabies right now is coming off the bench with half an hour to go. It just is. And so I wouldn't change that. By all means, rotate who you need to through the starting side, but Tate McDermott comes on the last 21 minutes, and that's in the last 20 or 30 minutes, and that's when he can have a proper impact. That's when his true value of the game is at its highest.
I think we're missing out one guy, Lukan Salakai Lotto.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Really happy to see him there.
Really delighted and really rewarded for great form. I mean, first of all, he plays in that. I mean, a bit like Tate McDermott. That AUNZ game, three good things came out of a really awful night. Number one, it was the biggest rugby crowd in Adelaide. Number two, Tiana Edmed was playing very, very well behind a beaten pack. And the only man who was really fronting up was Lukan Salakai Lotto. So I think that man, he's ahead of Josh Canham, who hasn't really. Well,
Canham's just quietly dropped out of the squad. Yeah, and
he has.
I think the surprise at the time was that Canham was actually ahead of Salakai Lotto when he was first included, because that didn't feel right.
But I mean, he was just banging down. He was absolutely just banging down the door. And in terms of that physicality, he is a man in form. And then the other thing is, which Schmidt did, which is interesting. If you cast your minds back to January, we were around. It was training camp, and all of a sudden we heard Lange Gleeson had been uninvited, essentially because he'd signed a deal with Montpellier. There's been a bit of a different thinking on that. Tom Hooper, who obviously played very, very well indeed in the third test. Lange Gleeson, Tupou, they don't have a choice, obviously, but he's away to Racing. So there's that'll be interesting as well. And I wonder, is that by necessity because they're so battered in terms of just injuries and thinness across the squad, or will they use that full complement of players across the Rugby Championship? I would stress, given how crucial ranking points are for us to have a good World Cup, and we know the Matildas effect in Australia and France. We were all in, most of us were in France. Once France was knocked out, it was a very, very different tournament. So I think possibly I don't think he's going to be picking the likes of Josh Kemeny with 2 caps, but I do think he will keep on using those players who he has in his system.
As much as he can. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think there's something in that. Yeah. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be really interesting. It's an interesting squad. I think Salakai Lotto potentially becomes the Skelton deputy for when he does get sent back to France with a bouquet from Rugby Australia. And thanks for your service for the last few months. We'll see you again in November. I think Salakai Lotto becomes that big man in the pack, and he was really good at doing that job last year. I think you're right. I think there is a bit of strategy at play through this Rugby Championship. And I think there needs to be, if I'm completely honest. So it will be fascinating to see how it all plays out. We, Jono, could keep going for another hour or so quite easily, and we could, get ourselves bogged into all kind of weeds. But I reckon we'll put a pin in this. We'll come back to this through the Rugby Championship. It'd be great to have you back on at some point, mate. Thanks so much for giving us some time and having a chat. It's a debut, well earned and well performed, son.
No, thank you so much for having me, lads. Real pleasure, and really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Jono. Awesome.
Brett McKay and Harry Jones, and mate, wonderful to hand Jonathan Drennan an 8-9 debut. That was a great chat, a really, really good chat. I love that.
Yeah, I love how all in he gets wherever he is and wherever he's been. Like even off air, we were talking about Cape Town and his experiences there, and he's just a guy who lives life to its fullest, and so it's really nice to see him. His articles are really well written, and by the way, he nailed Tane Edmund early. And definitively, he didn't say might, he said he will. So it's very cool. He's got good sources.
He has, definitely has. Find Jono on Twitter at JW Drennan, and on the Sydney Morning Herald rugby pages as well, where he's very much flying the flag over there and does some really, really good stuff. The NPC has begun in New Zealand. The Curry Cup is underway in South Africa, but as we mentioned earlier, it's an otherwise rugby-free weekend, so thus no weekend postmortem this weekend, and we're going to park the tap and go until next week at least as well, probably. So just make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next edition of that whenever it does come out. It's properly exclusive to the 8-9 YouTube. It's short and sharp, and it's mostly completely unscripted, but has been a lot of fun, mate. I've enjoyed the tap and go.
Yeah, it's good, and I think it added a little bit of spice to the week. So yeah, we're looking forward to that.
It does,
and I think as we pointed out with Jono, there's no rest for the wicked. Rugby just kind of dives from the biggest of all, like, oh, here we go to Ellis Park, see what happens now.
Yeah. And look, I have to admit, I didn't write for Rugby Pass this week, and I've sort of had to do a bit of a forced detox the last 4 or 5 days. I've not read a lot of stuff. I've not watched a lot of stuff. I've just tried to do other things, and so this weekend, I believe there'll be things happening in my backyard, which I haven't seen for a good period of time. So it's going to be good. So that's to say, no games of the week. We'll be back next week then with another weekly episode. And I think, mate, that's probably us done this week.
Sounds good, man.
Sounds right. Sounds about right, doesn't it? So Another great episode of the 8-9 Combo Rugby Podcast is behind us. Our sincere thanks to Jonathan Drennan for joining us. Tell us what you think by following Harry and I on the socials in our usual places, at Harry Baldy Jones and at BMC Sport. You can find the 8-9 Combo on Twitter, on YouTube, obviously, and Blue Sky as well. You can leave a comment on Spotify. You can leave a comment here on the YouTube channel. We love seeing comments, and we try and get back to them as much as we can. We love shares, we love ratings, we love reviews, wherever you can as well. This is the 8-9 Combo, the short side set piece combination you didn't realize you needed in a rugby podcast. Sean Maloney is loaded in the closer. I'm Brett McKay. He's Harry Jones, and we will be back in your ears next week.
Come play with us.
Here goes Jones with another bruising run. He links up with McKay, who pops back to Jones. They can't. They won't. They will. What a try. The Dream Team combo go in again.